Okay, to those who have joined us, thank you very much for joining us on this Spartanburg online TIM team meeting. First one that we've had, and this is great that you've been able to come in and meet with us. I will say that this is starting to work out pretty well in that there are still some state agencies who have restrictions on travel. So we're able to get together by sitting in the office, one or two or more people at a computer and hooking into this online TIM team meeting. Excuse me. So this is great. I'm Jeff Allen. I'm the Parsons man in South Carolina who handles the Sharp 2 training in conjunction with Ray Parker at SCDOT. And just so that you know, we normally have spring and fall TIM team meetings, usually face-to-face. So this is a new experience for us. We've done one in Myrtle Beach a couple of weeks ago, handled Greenville this morning, and you'll see the schedule a couple slides down the road here as we go through this. So again, welcome to the TIM, the virtual online TIM team meeting, and we'll get Jeff Corbin to advance the slide. So explain who we are, agencies participating today. You'll hear from a couple of gentlemen, one out of our Peachtree Corners office, going to talk to you about distracted driving, particularly public safety officers distracted while they're driving, and that is a danger. I mean, as he'll tell you, we do have exemptions in most of the laws. However, we also set the example. So if we get involved in a wreck, that's a problem. And he's got some interesting information to share with you. After he does that, we'll hear from Jay Cox with DHEC, and he's part of the hazmat response team, and he's got some really good information that we needed at the department I was with for 23 years in the fire service. And right now, I'm, as 15th year as a law enforcement officer, I shouldn't have to deal with that. But hey, you never know. Good information that we get from DHEC regarding hazmat response. Agencies and disciplines, we need everybody to participate. This is an opportunity for us to network, to get to know each other face to face. Know that when you show up on a scene, you say, hey, Jay, hey, Kevin, hey, Matt. I mean, that's an important thing that we already know who we're dealing with, and we're all working off the same sheet of music. So these meetings are a chance for us to do that, and we need to do that. That's so terribly important. So today's agenda, I've kind of gone over a little bit with you already. I'm going to cover some local statistics before we hear from Kevin Smith out of the Atlanta area office. So we'll go to the next slide and carry on here. There are the disciplines, some of the disciplines that we like to have involved in this. So hopefully we will have some law enforcement, some fire service personnel, EMS, towing, SHEP, DOT, DHEC, coroners, deputy coroners. I mean, they're all coming to the game, to the scene. They're all part of the game. When the dice are rolled, we've got to be playing off the same sheet of music or we can get in trouble. Any one of these scenes, I'm preaching to the choir. Any one of these scenes can go south in a heartbeat. So we want to make sure that we're doing this as safe as possible. Next slide. We are working with several agencies right now to reschedule and schedule new Sharp 2 TIM training classes. We are back face to face. We do pay attention to social distancing guidelines. I carry a touchless thermometer with me so that we can take temperatures and list them as we start the classes. Masks are strongly recommended. And we have the classes, as I said, we started back up 1st of June, went through a bit of a rush of classes. And the issue with that was so many had been canceled because of some virus that's out there somewhere. So they got in touch with me and we quickly rescheduled them. We went through a real rush of classes, and now we're starting to schedule more through the rest of this year. And I've actually booked 2 already in January. So if your agency needs this training, if they haven't had it, or if you have members who need it, please contact me and let's schedule it. The South Carolina Department of Transportation, who pays for this training, it's no charge to you, requires we have a minimum of 15 participants. There is no maximum, and all disciplines must be invited. For the training and or these meetings, you've got to register on sctimnetwork.com. If you don't register and we end up having a low enrollment based on the registrations, we contact everyone who has registered and let them know that the class, based on low enrollment, has been canceled. If you haven't registered, we hate that you drive a distance and you show up for a class and you find out that the class is not being held. So please, if you're going to register for the training or talk to anyone who wants to register for the training, make sure they go on sctimnetwork.com and register for that class. That's important. Next slide. And there's our schedule. We did a Greenville session this morning, Spartanburg now. And then tomorrow we'll do Rock Hill and Charleston. And the next day, Midlands and Florence. A couple of weeks, Jasper I-95, Aiken, and then Orangeburg. As I said, we did Myrtle Beach a couple of weeks ago. So those are the 10 locations that we do these team meetings, and usually face-to-face. And now, because of COVID-19, we're trying this online, and so far it's worked out very well. So we're happy that you could join us for this meeting this afternoon. Next slide. Now, we did just get an update from the Federal Highway Administration, and I mention them because any class that takes place with an instructor in this state, and there aren't many, there are only about 4 or 5 active instructors in the state. Any class that takes place, the Sharp 2 class with an instructor in the state, they are required to forward to me the numbers and the disciplines that were in the class. I get on the Federal Highway Administration website and I add the numbers. So you can see to October 5th, which is the, until today, that's the last report date that we had. You can see the number 7,344 in person and 944 web-based training, again, as of October 5th. Next slide. And we're, it's funny, we're at 59.2. I set a goal of 60% this year. I set a goal of 50% last year. We hit, I think, 51.2. So we got our goal last year. I set a goal of 60% this year as of the 5th. As of today, the numbers I just got today, we went up 0.1. So we're at 59.3. So I'm crossing my fingers. I want to hit that goal of 60. But again, unfortunately, COVID-19 really got in the way. We were on a great roll until the middle of March, and then we had to start calling classes, postponing and canceling classes. So that was unfortunate. So we're at 59.3 as of today, and looking forward to booking some more classes and getting some training out there. Now, if we hit 60%, think about that for a second. Whether you're a glass half full or half empty kind of a person, we hit 60%. I mean, that's pretty good, but it still means 40% of the responders in this state will not have taken Sharp 2 training. That's a lot of people. So we need to get these people through. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie officer, a brand new firefighter, you know, a new DOT person. It doesn't matter who, you know, what level you are, right up to the sheriff or the police chief or the fire chief. If there's an opportunity that you might have of stopping to assist at a roadway incident, we need to make sure everybody's playing off the same sheet of music. That's important. So everybody needs to go through this training, and a lot of the disciplines, law enforcement gets 3.5 hours, CEU towards their recertification. EMS gets 4 hours. This is federal DOT CAPC certified for 4 hours towards their national registry, and we are a national registry state. And my wife used to remind me of that the years she was a paramedic going through the agony of recertification, but we won't get onto that soapbox right now. But yeah, so there are some hours available for people out there if they take the training. So, and that wasn't always the case. We only started that a couple of years ago. So if you took the class 3-4 years ago and you'd like to take it again and get a refresher and pick up some hours for recertification, check sctimnetwork.com and see where we've got classes scheduled. Next slide, please. Okay, so what do we got? Local statistics. Greenville's leading the pack, and that's not a great thing to say if you're number one right now. So this is as of the 18th. It's the last time that I got about a couple times a month, we'll get a county update. So the 18th was the last time. Greenville County, 61 fatalities. Spartanburg, 46. Greenwood, 19. Lawrence, 15. So that's kind of the local stuff. You can see Greenville and then Spartanburg, Horry County, 46. Berkeley, 45. Charleston, 45. A lot of fatalities. A lot of fatalities. Next slide. So 799 was the number. I think this morning, what did we say it was? 829 was the number yesterday. So 829, we were behind last year. Now, one fatality is one too many, but we were behind when we were at 799. We were behind last year. We had less fatalities than last year. I hate to say it, but we fatal crashes this year, 743. Last year, 759. So we're 16 fatal crashes less this year, but we're actually up 7 fatalities. So we're at 829. Last year, we had 822. So that's not good. Numbers rising quickly. Anybody spends a lot of time on the road like I do, 4,000 miles a month out on the highways, you can see how people are driving, and it's not pleasant. And our numbers are jumping. I wish we had another 700-800 troopers and lots more law enforcement out there. So a bunch more visibility and a lot more enforcement. Maybe some of these people would slow down, particularly those big trucks. They're moving along at a pretty good pace. So Spartanburg County is sitting right now at 46. Last year at this time, they were at 56. So that's a drop of 10. The year 2018, they were at 62. And then 2017, they were at 40. So all over the place here. So, and obviously this is a factor that you've just got to take into consideration that you got enough officers, you don't have enough officers, and how crazy are people driving, and they are driving crazy. The D drivers out there are doing a lot of causing a lot of carnage. Cherokee County's at 8, Union County's at 5. Between those 3 counties, we're looking at 7.3% of that 799 in the state. Next slide, please. So we have Mr. Kevin Smith, who's a field project manager with Parsons. He's out of the Atlanta area, and he's got a superb presentation to share with us here. So I am going to mute my mic and pass the presentation along to Kevin. So go ahead, sir.
Okay, Jeff Corbin, can I be heard?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, we'll go ahead to the next slide, please. Distracted driving. We hear about it every day. We talk about it every day. It's on the phone, doing makeup, shaving, writing, text messaging, eating. It doesn't matter. We see it every day when we're out on the road. And every state has laws that against distracted driving, and we can write citations for this. Next slide, please. But is this a common occurrence in your emergency vehicle? Fire service, typically the laptop is controlled by the right seater, so the driver dedicates all his time and energies to driving the apparatus. But law enforcement and possibly EMS and so forth, you may not have that ability, and you may have to keep up with what's going on in the laptop as well as what's in your vehicle. Even though we are legally exempt from the laws, it doesn't mean that we're that much better of a driver, because the public safety personnel are part of the citizens or part of the community in which we work. It doesn't mean that our vehicle won't get in crashes, and that if we don't watch what we're doing, that we can cause harm to the citizens that we're supposed to be serving. Next slide. As I said, legal public safety officers are not, they may be legally exempt, but they're not immune from the laws of physics. It's estimated that 30% or more of public safety crashes, police, fire, EMS, public safety service patrol, et cetera, involve distracted driving in one form or another. NHTSA itself estimates that 94% of the motoring public drives distracted every day. And driving distracted doesn't mean that that person is necessarily on their cell phone or texting at the time. NHTSA defines distracted driving as doing any activity that takes the driver's attention away from the road and what they're doing. Cell phone use, laptop use, looking down to change the channel on the AM/FM radio, reaching down to get something to eat. All these are distracted driving. The primary offenders are for public safety are the laptop and the phone, the laptop being the worst, because if you're trying to look at a call, if you're en route to a call and you're trying to look at that laptop to get a description of a bad guy or the address or this type of thing while you're driving, you have a tendency to keep your eyes there for 2 or 3 seconds while you try to read the whole sentence instead of glancing down to get the address and back up at the roadway to make sure you're not rear-ending somebody. Next slide. Studies have shown audio stimuli take precedence over visual stimuli in the human brain. When we attempt to multitask or pay attention to more than one thing, our visual range will decrease. This may go back to prehistoric days when it was more important to hear that saber-toothed tiger than to see it. By the time a human saw the tiger, it was too late and you were about to be eaten. So drivers distracted by cell phone use see significantly less than drivers not on the cell phone, which is what this graphic up on the screen shows. The left-hand graphic is a driver that is not driving distracted, and the highlighted area on his windshield is everything that he sees. When a driver is distracted by a cell phone or a laptop or other such thing, their visual acuity or the amount of stimuli that they take in through visual cues is reduced dramatically, as much as 60%. As a matter of fact, most research done by NHTSA and National Institutes of Health and the National Insurance Institutes and so forth show no statistical difference between handheld and hands-free use of cell phones and have stopped testing both ways. The difference is less than 1 standard deviation in statistical analysis, and probably 10 or 12 years ago, they stopped testing both ways. Next slide. This next little video you're about to see is of a bicyclist who has a helmet cam on to a stop sign and is looking both ways, looking at traffic, waiting to see when he can go. You can see a white police car coming.
What the fuck are you looking at your phone, officer?
And the peculiar Missouri police officer who was attempting to make that left turn at the time was apparently looking at his cell phone, doing something on his cell phone, even though he's legally exempt from getting a ticket for it. The bicyclist had been sitting still for 10 or 15 seconds when that police officer made that left turn right into him. Never saw him because he wasn't paying attention, and basically ran over a bicyclist. The next video we're going to see will tell you about 2 sisters who were killed by a state trooper who was driving distracted. Jeff, next slide, please.
Police constantly warn us about the dangers of distracted driving. They can even give you a ticket if you're texting behind the wheel.
But a 41 Action News investigation found some officers are not taking their own advice. Investigator Ryan Katz shows the consequences of what happens when an officer's attention wanders from the road.
This photo was taken the day sisters Jessica and Kelly Ewell lost their lives.
You never know in life that would be your last moment. And I really hope that they didn't know.
It was the day after Thanksgiving in 2007. Kim Schlau remembers seeing the coroner walk up to her house.
I didn't want to open the door because if I opened that door, it became real. You know, and until I opened that door, I still had 3 daughters.
Jessica and Kelly died in a horrific head-on collision with an Illinois state trooper.
He literally drove through the top of their car.
The trooper was responding to a car crash in the St. Louis area. Court records show he was driving 126 miles per hour, talking to his girlfriend on a cell phone, and emailing for directions on his computer when he lost control of the car.
On so many levels, this crash was preventable.
An extreme and tragic example. We found video of other crashes that never made headlines. Watch as this Missouri state trooper driving 60 while looking at his computer drifts off the road and then loses control. 41 Action News investigators looked through 40 crash reports in Missouri, all with a common cause: distracted driving by law enforcement.
I said, watch out. And that's when he hit.
Bob Meyer was driving on this Independence Road last August when he slowed down to take a right-hand turn. The police officer driving behind him never even hit the brakes. Bob's head smashed the back window of his truck.
He says, I'm so sorry. He says, I was looking at my computer.
We read similar stories all over the state. Officers getting into wrecks because of distraction.
And just listen to the close call a sheriff's deputy had last year. He was on the phone and approaching a railroad crossing in rural Johnson County, Missouri. He says he didn't see or hear the train coming until the very last second when he slammed on the brakes. The train collided with the bumper on the deputy's car and actually spun it around so it was parallel with the train tracks. That deputy just a couple feet away from losing his life.
We found distraction is cited as the main cause in an average of 3 police crashes every month.
Yeah, it's very easy to get distracted.
Sergeant Andy Coates, a state patrol veteran of 17 years, admits there's a lot competing for his attention these days.
On a black Ford Taurus.
Along with the radio, there are lights and sirens, radar technology, and most of all, the laptop sitting right next to the wheel.
Officers are wrecking squad cars all over the country because they're distracted, because they're focused on something else.
It's such a problem that Keith Wenzel, a longtime sergeant with the Dallas Police Department, now leads a crash course in distracted driving. From fender benders to serious wrecks. His message to officers: you can't divide your focus between computers and the road.
You may get complacent in what you do and realize, well, I can do all these things and still maintain control of my vehicle, when reality is that you can't.
It's beyond the fact that the trooper was driving 126 miles an hour. In my mind, there's not a call out there important enough, even on a fairly deserted highway, for me to be driving 126 miles an hour to try to get to. You just can't control your vehicle. If you arrive on the scene, you can't help the people you're trying to help. You've got to get there and get there safely. The next little video shows what happens when an officer looks at their laptop for 2 or 3 seconds too long. Jeff, if you'll show the next slide. That particular video is caught through the camera system kicking on in the crash, and it backed up for 30 seconds and captured the whole crash. That was my camera in my car 5 or 6 years ago. I am retired law enforcement, spent 29 years with a local metropolitan Atlanta agency, and was a watch commander. And I was having a really bad day. I was running way behind on getting stuff done. I had been outside of my jurisdiction on a detail, trying to get back into the city, trying to keep up with scheduling, and trying to communicate with a couple of my sergeants. And I looked at the laptop for about probably 2 or 3 seconds. And about the time I looked up was about the time I hit the brakes, was when I hit that brand new Cadillac. Fortunately, the lady driving it, she did go to the hospital, but she wasn't seriously hurt. And the city had to buy her a new Cadillac and had to pay off her claim. And a couple of seconds of distraction or not paying attention to what I was doing cost the city money, cost me time, and I did what I was sworn not to do. My job was not to go out and hurt people. My job was to go out and help people and not to cause any harm. Next slide, Jeff. So a few suggestions to prevent a crash. Use the radio. It may be old school technology, but if you're in law enforcement and you need a description of a suspect or the address or that type of thing, don't rely on the laptop. Rely on the radio. Have them give that lookout again. Yes, it'll tie up the radio a little bit, but if it's a high priority call and it's a call that's in motion, use the radio. That's what it's there for. Close that laptop lid to make it less appealing. There's technology out there that can prevent you, if the vehicle's in motion, from using the laptop, from changing screens, sending messages, updating things. It'll allow you to look at the screen that you have up on your laptop, but not manipulate it, which can help prevent you from being too distracted for too long. If you really have to use the laptop, pull over to the side of the road, pull over on the shoulder. One of the things that I had a SUV, and as a watch commander, I didn't have a cage in it, but I had a gun vault in the back. So whenever we went to high priority calls, it's likely that people were armed and so forth. Instead of driving to the call, getting there, and then going around to the back of the truck to get my long gun out of the weapon vault, I would pull over to the shoulder. I'd pull into a parking lot, get my long gun out and bring it up front with me. I would rather arrive 30 seconds later and arrive prepared than get on scene and not be prepared for what I need to do when I get there. Next slide, please. The couple of the public safety or national safety events that are going on in October, typically April is Distracted Driving Awareness Month, but due to the pandemic, National Safety Council postponed that and did it throughout the month of October. And the next big one coming up will be the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over enforcement mobilization nationwide, December 16th through 2020 through January 1, 2021. There is information that you can get on it and packets and kits and so forth at trafficsafetymarketing.gov. They have all sorts of information that's put out through NHTSA and through many of the other agencies out there. Next slide, please. If you have any questions or comments, you can post those into the chat for the Q&A in the Cisco WebEx event here. Or if you have other questions, you can reach out to Jeff Allen or Jeff Corbin. If they don't know the answers and they need to get me to answer it, they can forward it to me. My email is Kevin, KEVIN.R.Smith@parsons.com. I'm happy to help you any way I can. Just let me know. Jeff Corbin, back to you.
I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Jay.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I can be heard.
Yep, Jay, you're good.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to say thanks again for the opportunity to present this information. I am Jay Cox. I work with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. I'm in the Myrtle Beach office. I'm the environmental response coordinator for our area or region. We handle Horry, Georgetown, and Williamsburg County out of this office, basically. And I have about 5 members on this team. And we can go to the next slide. And so our presentation is just a generalization of what we kind of do, and just to give some introductory information on kind of our responses and what we do when we get a call. Next slide. So some type of incident happens, a truck rollover or wreck, something that causes some kind of a release of a material. Majority of what we have are fuel releases, diesel, And we do have other kind of spills and incidents that occur. An initial call comes in to our Division of Environmental Response. We have a 24-hour line where those calls come into. That number you can see is 1-888-481-0125. And when that call comes in, it's routed to whatever region or area of the state that needs to go. And we have comparable ERT teams throughout the state. So usually that whoever's contacting us, be 911, could be emergency management, can be a fire chief, could be a state trooper. That call comes into them, we get it. We're also going to want usually some contact information for that person on scene, whether that's an incident commander or battalion chief, highway patrol. So we do like to try and ask if we can get, a contact phone number for that person that's on the scene. And we understand that not everybody wants to give their numbers out to who they don't know. So we're more than glad to provide our number for that person to call us back, and so we can make contact with them. Next slide. So once we kind of get a call, like for instance, I am on call this week right now as we speak. So I am the regional on-scene coordinator if I get a call and I show up at an incident. So that role is passed off as each person takes a call, and so that's the ROSC. And we get a call and we're dispatched to a scene where there's been some type of accident or spill has happened. If there's any other resources that we might need, we request that back through our central office duty officer, and that could be other staff members or other information or anything to help us kind of assess and deal with what needs to be handled at the scene. Next slide. So typically your responsibilities while we're on our way to the incident is to make contact. We're contacting again that first responder, whatever agency you may represent, and we're trying to determine what's been released, how much, things of that nature. We'll go through that on a later slide. We're also wanting to kind of give an idea of an expectation of how long it'll be before we get there. Again, I just had a incident yesterday to where the traffic was backed up for about 2 hours. So I was practically not going to be able to get there before they pretty much cleared the scene. So me and the incident commander that was on scene, the battalion chief, basically texted back and forth pictures and talked about, go ahead and pull the truck. We'll assess the scene once everything's out. And so we try to use technology to our advantage in that kind of scene. I haven't had one where the traffic's been that bad that I wasn't able to make it to the scene in a reasonable amount of time like that. But we do try to use what we have to help us as best as possible. We're also going to try to start to find out who that responsible party is. So that'd be the truck owner, the trucking company. Have they got any cleanup contractors that they have on contract with them that can come out, start to make their way to the incident scene to begin some cleanup? Are there any other property issues that need to be addressed? Was it on the highway? Is it right away? Things of that nature. We're trying to determine that kind of information as well. Next slide. So once we get to a scene, our basic responsibility that we're kind of looking at is environmental. So we're looking at what the material's been released or spilled. Is it currently actively spilling and releasing, or has it been stopped? What's it going to take to control that? Can it be contained? What's already been released? And what that contractor is going to basically, bring with them to kind of do a proper cleanup and remediate that area that's been impacted. Next slide. So again, some other information that we're trying to gather, and this is usually after we've had that first call. We're making several phone calls, but when did it happen? What was it released? What has been released? Has been gasoline, diesel? Was it oil? Was it, was it a chemical? How much of it? Are there any known hazards that we know at the time? Are there any safety data sheets available? If it's possibly a truck, a freight truck of some kind that was carrying something. So what kind of shipping papers it might have? Do we have a responsible party on site that sometimes may be the truck driver or may not, that he may be contracted with another company that's responsible for that freight. And again, is there a cleanup contractor, on their way? Next slide. So again, we get into identifying the extent, the volume, impacted areas, and any other things that may be related to that, be ditches, streams, storm drains, and things of that nature. And we're also trying to determine, again, if a responsible party is on site or not. If they are, we try to get all their information, their phone number, their address, things of that nature. Do they have a contractor that is available to come and begin some cleanup? And kind of speak to them on, this is what's occurred, and kind of an expectation of the cleanup that's going to have to be done. And we'll discuss that with the RP there on the scene. Next slide. So if we don't have a responsible party right then and there, again, we're going to be talking probably with our highway patrol if they're available. Again, I just yesterday I had an incident where we've kind of did everything that I've just talked about on the last 3 slides. And so we're actually with the highway patrol, we can get a lot of information. We get some contact information, phone numbers. We don't have some of that. We can try to use some of the DOT information that's on the truck, license plate. And then we can go back to our central office duty officer if we need to and say, hey, here's the information we got. Is there anything that you can help us with? We also have some apps that we try to use on our phone if we need to, if it's trying to identify a certain kind of material that we may not be really familiar with. So next slide. So responsibilities for cleanup. We're there to kind of ensure that responsible party is taking care of the cleanup, that they're doing it in an efficient and safe manner. They're getting it properly disposed of. If it's hazardous, it goes to a place that will handle hazardous waste. If it's not, typically that might be a landfill. We're going to ask for those ticket receipts back where they took it, wherever they took it to. We're also going to check with the landfill to make sure that they did take it there correctly and treated it properly when they took it, handled it properly. And any kind of follow-up that needs to be done. A lot of times we may not know the full extent of an impact until kind of later on, and see if there's any possible further remediation that needs to take place after an incident's occurred. So next slide. So what we're not responsible for is declaring an evacuation. We may have information that a county can use for some of that information, but we don't declare it. We don't do traffic control. Our highway patrol and our law officers typically handle that. We don't do medical services. We don't handle the public safety side. So, I'm not the one to necessarily say turn off power to somewhere or to cut it back on. That's going to maybe a fire marshal that determines that. And roadside cleanup is handled by that contractor that's been basically hired by the responsible party. And they typically will need to set up or coordinate with DOT or the county maintenance or whoever's kind of handling that specific area. And like again, for the incident I had yesterday, I had a highway patrol officer when the cleanup contractor got there. He'd set up cones. They had to close down one lane on a 4-lane highway, and the incident happened pretty close to the shoulder. So in order for the cleanup crew to kind of get there, he put out some safety cones. He parked and did a left block. I was able to pull in around and in front of them and kind of maintain my safety. And so that cleanup contractor, I'm usually in touch with them when I'm approaching the scene, trying to find out where I need to park, where I need to approach from, and try and maintain my safety as well. Next slide. So this following few slides are just going to be some examples of what a first responder may see once they get there, and it may be where they're, okay, we need to call somebody because we don't know what this is. So next slide. So chemical releases out of some type of freight truck that has had an accident and lost its cargo. This may be a situation where we're going to be looking for that safety data sheet, that manifest. We may have to, determine what is in those barrels, determine proper cleanup, any kind of special procedures that need to be brought in to effectively clean that up and dispose of it properly. Next slide. What we see mostly, at least in our area, is fuel releases, typically gasoline, diesel. Of course, an 18-wheeler tractor trailers is going to be diesel most of the time. And next slide. So we'll have an incident that's occurred. This truck's rolled over. We'll have usually a punctured saddle tank. It's going to impact the highway, or it's going to impact the shoulder. It's going to impact possibly soil, a storm drain. It may be close to a creek, and that creek may end up in the Waccamaw River somewhere. So we're there to try and ensure that responsible party is doing what's necessary to reduce any impact on the environment from that accident. Next slide. And that's what we typically see the most of, whether it's punctured because the driver drove over something or as the result of an accident. We have a punctured saddle tank. They can vary, but we're looking at somewhere around 75-gallon tanks a lot of times. The puncture's very high up on the tank. You may have very little release. If it's at the bottom, of course, you may lose it all. And next slide. And so we're usually looking at getting the vehicle moved before we can kind of tell the whole picture. Again, my incident yesterday was spot on. The fire chief battalion I was in contact with was like, hey, we can smell it, but we can't really see it. And we're not going to probably be able to tell until we get the truck pulled. So we kind of decided, once you get the truck pulled, give me a call back. We'll take some pictures. I'll try to check with the company and see if we got a contractor en route to kind of start some cleanup. And so that's how that kind of works. Next slide. And so again, fuel on the road or on the side of the road, shoulder of the road. A lot of times, some of the material used for cleanup can be sand, dirt, oil dry. I had some really good incidents lately where DOT has really helped out with some sand. They've had some releases to where they've been able to put sand on the road. That'll help keep it contained and kind of keep it soaked up. Had some where they put sand out in a ditch to keep it from, moving further down to a stream. So each area, each county is going to have somewhat different capabilities based on their resources. But we certainly try to use every available resource we have. Next slide. And so the removal of anything contaminated, that's going to fall basically to that responsible party, that cleanup contractor. And so we're looking at any soil removal, any free product removal. So if there's a ditch, a pretty large ditch, and most of the fuel ended up in that ditch, they may bring in a vacuum truck to remove that. All of that's going to be done by that cleanup contractor hired by the responsible party. Next slide. And so DOT comes in, puts some sand down, and you know, that's a great thing. It does help. It kind of keeps the contained. We don't look at DOT for getting that back up again. That's the cleanup contractor that typically removes that. And sometimes there's not a whole lot of fuel on an asphalt highway, and sometimes it's not recoverable. It's already kind of done its thing. It's seeped into the asphalt a bit, and there's really not an effective way to remove it at that point. We may have to kind of leave it in place, let it evaporate. Traffic will tend to help with that, and natural attenuation in the environment, sunlight would typically help us with some of that. And so those are some of the various things. Again, the contractor will be involved in that, any kind of removal of sand, and we'll be checking with them to make sure it's been taken to a proper location. Next slide. So responsible party. So they are basically the ones that are required to make any notifications, whether that be to the National Response Center, be it Coast Guard or county. And just this week, I've had all three of those. So I had an NRC report come in. I talked with the Coast Guard on Sunday, and I dealt with county fire yesterday. So all of those I typically call on a week when I'm on call. Again, spill containment to stop it if it's actively releasing, and effectively maintain it. Don't let it get away. Cleanup is done usually by their third-party contractor. Disposal is handled by that cleanup contractor. And then again, we want that information of where they've taken it to and how they've handled it properly. Usually I'm the person, if I'm on call, I handle all that. And then the next person that's on call, they get an incident, they handle, you know, their incidents during their week. So that information will be coming into me, email, and any other various sources that way. Next slide. So our main Department of Environmental Response, 803-898-3432. If you have some general questions, we tried to kind of gear this a little bit more broad, and we hope that at some point in time when we're back to face-to-face, this presentation can be given by the ERT personnel that's in your specific area. But if you do in the meantime have questions, you can contact that main agency line. If you'd like to report something that is a spill, then the 1-888-481-0125 will be the number for that. And again, thank you for the time.
All right, Jay and Kevin, thank you both for contributing to this. Some great information from both of you that I'm sure everybody can use. As you can see, you can follow us on facebook.com/SCTIM Network or twitter.com/SCTIM Network. And if anyone needs training or wants to know when the next meeting is in their area, and for some reason they're not getting emails, just go to sctimnetwork.com. You see that down on the lower right, and you pull the calendar up and you can click on and register for any of the events that are listed there. So that's basically how you can follow us and stay in touch with what's going on with the South Carolina TIM network in the state of South Carolina. Next slide, Mr. Corbin. So Ray Parker's the guy, he's my partner in crime, a guy that I work closely with in the state of South Carolina. He's the SCDOT TIM coordinator. You can see his contact information there at the DOT, his email and his phone number, and then you've got my information there, email and phone number. If there's anything either one of us can do to help you, including schedule some training, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. So again, thank you to all of you for joining this meeting. This is a new experience for us to do this online and virtual, and so far it's worked out pretty great. So hopefully it's been good for you too. Jeff Corbin, anything to close it up?
Just wanted to share with everyone that a recording from today's meeting, as well as other information that was shared, including the PowerPoint presentation and links for those videos, will be available on the SC10 Network website.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks all. Be careful, be safe. You know, don't trust the traffic in either direction. We want to talk to you, not about you. So until next time, just have a great day. Have a super week. Bye for now.